Okay guys, let's log into GitHub. This is how I would do it. So first we want to go to the page we want to automate. And what we want to do next, we have our page. So this is the GitHub login page. So let's go to our Solution Explorer, and this is the layout. So inside of pages, we're going to add a new class called GitHub login page. All right, and just for the sake of speed, I am going to take this variable page and use it as my template. So let's go to our GitHub login page. And so we'll change this to GitHub login page. Put that there. All right. So now back on the login page, we need to look at what elements do we need to log in. So we need our username and our password, and we need to hit the sign in. So let's go ahead and find our selectors. Okay, so very conveniently, we have an ID, we have a name. There's a lot of ways we can select this element, so let's go ahead and do the easiest way, which is the ID. And let's see, so our password will be by password, and our sign-in button. Okay, so there's no ID for sign-in, so we can use name, or we could do an XPath combination of some of these attributes. But we'll go ahead and just do, okay, so let's get started. So what we want to do is we will say username and put, I'll just call it username by. We'll do by ID. And we'll say it's the username element. Put the by in here. And let's go back, see what we were going to use. So ID field, okay, and we want to do something similar for the password, so we can just copy this just for the sake of speed. Copy this, we could say by. And this should just be password. So lastly, we want our login button. So we're going to have to do something a little differently for the login button. Actually, no, we can just use name. We could also build an XPath that uses the tag, a class, and then one of the other attributes like name or type. But we'll just use name. So we can, I'll just put that there for now. Duplicate this. Change this to name. And this will be our sign in button. Let's fix some of that. Oops, I actually want that. Get rid of this guy. Choose here, zoom in a bit. Okay. So we'll name this to login, and we want to wait for the username. So we want to and so we will pass in actually, so we'll say username and password. Name, let's get rid of this guy. Okay, so that's about it, almost. And then we can just do oh, that's not right. It's this one. Okay, and then finally, we want to wait for our sign in, and then we want to click our sign in. Okay. So also we need to consider, we need to navigate to GitHub. So we can either control that from the test, or we can control that from the page. You know what we should do? Let's go to our base page. We'll put a method in here. We'll call it navigation. Call it navigation. And we'll say, yep, that's it. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to create our actual test class for it. So we have our example test. So let's just copy this. Item, we'll call it GitHub login test. Okay, and so then we'll pull in our new page. So we'll pull in. So we don't need this variable page anymore. Don't need this variable page, but we do need our GitHub login page. Now, if you don't put the access modifier, it defaults to private. So instead of having to type out private, but I'll just leave it like that for now. Okay, so now let's say login page is equal to new GitHub login page, and then we want to give it a driver. Let's zoom in a bit so you can see. Okay, so now this is our test. So what we want to do, let's clear this out, and we want to login page, log in. But before we log in, so we do need to give it a username and password. But before that, we also need to navigate. Okay, so let's get this URL here, and we can say string GitHub URL is equal to okay. Then we also want to give a username and password. So that's just declaring it. Here, I'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Take username at example.com. And we'll do something similar. Okay, so now we need to do is pass in our username and password. Okay, so I will throw a thread.sleep just to slow it down so we can see any strangeness. But let's give this a meaningful name. So we'll call this login to GitHub. And we'll call it sign in to GitHub. Okay, so let's right click and run our test. Just give that a second. Okay, it opened up over here. So it worked, but it didn't seem to enter the text into the password field. Okay, yeah. So it's doing it, but it didn't seem to. Here, let me see if I can. Actually, here, let me slow it down just a bit, because I need a second to move it over. All right, let's take a look at this. Okay. Okay, I see. I see. I must have made a mistake here. Yeah, I did. Excuse me, that's my fault. That's my fault. Okay, that was my mistake. So what we need to do is we should be sending this to the password element. There we go. All right, let's go back to our test and let's run that. Now I'm only putting the sleeps in here just to show you guys, but normally we wouldn't keep these sleeps in here. So let me drag that over. Perfect. So now, here, you know what? Let's do this. Okay, so that's not going to work. Good, which is fine. So we want this button. Okay, so after we log in, let's do something else too. So we will do very similar. Do this by XPath. So let's make this go away. This here. Or we can assert that we found it. So this will be our login check. So if we see this, we know that the login test was successful. And then afterwards we can click this and make it go away. So let's do that. So we'll say, we'll call it incorrect credentials error message. It's kind of a mouthful, but, and then we'll call this the element. Put this guy here. Now down in here, we'll do a very similar we'll wait for it, and then we will click it. But first, we want to be sure that we found it. So what we can do displayed. So this should be a Boolean. We're going to return whether or not it's displayed. So we're going to say, and we're going to wait for it first, and then we're going to return if it's displayed. So we're going to now we're going to say return elem displayed. There's a better way to handle this, but for this example, this is all we need. So let's go to our test, and we want to assert is true, login page, dismissed error message, displayed is true. Let me see how to fix that. Let me see. There we go. So it's going to wait for it up to a certain amount of time, and then it's going to return that it's true. So this could be the end of our test. So let's go ahead and run that. Now this sleep is only for, bringing the browser over. So let's go ahead and run this. Submit a bit. Okay. Excellent. So that passed. So now, but if we were to put the sleep back in here, we would see that, here, I'm going to put this a little longer this time. We would see that that message would still be there. So we're going to run it, see the message is still there. It's going to assert I'm going to shut it down before it finishes, but what we're going to do is run it again, but this time close out the message. Okay, so that message is still here. Okay, so let's close this down. And let's shorten this time. And let's do dismiss the error message. But now let's add another sleep just so we can see that it did it. And we will run this. Okay, let's bring it over. Perfect. See, it went away. It clicked it. Excellent. And last but not least, we don't actually want to keep these sleeps. You want to get into the habit of not having your sleeps. Okay, so now let's run it without the sleeps. Much faster. And it passed. Awesome. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.